Well, hello and welcome to Seasoned Voices Radio. And this episode 3, with the fabulous Cari Taylor. Now, Cari and I have known each other for many years, and we met in, well, I don't know, I think it was a Facebook group initially, but we went on and developed this wonderful relationship where we just felt that we could talk about pretty much anything under the sun. And so we have done that on occasion. So welcome, Cari. So fabulous to have you here on Seasoned Voices Radio with me.
Thank you, Simone. Our conversations are always so rich that I was
Yeah.
really looking forward to today.
Okay, and so just for our listeners and our viewers, I'll just do a little bit of the background, but I'm sure more of your background is actually going to come through as we continue this conversation. So just a little bit about my very special guest, Cari. And Cari talks about being a voice for life herself, revealing and returning to the one living system of creation, and that is where her heart and her work lies. After lifetimes of work and returning and remembering the initiate's way, she's called to voice this eternal system, seated on living system principles, natural laws that seek balance for people, place, and planet, and the process for this place that asks us to dive deeply into our own transformation from awareness to realization to actualization. Now, I think that is such a beautiful way to introduce you, and also the topic of this episode, which is stepping into our elder voice, our seasoned voice. So I guess my first question for you would be, how did that look for you? How did you discover that particular voice? And then obviously you've moved into an amplification of the work that you started at. So initially, what did that look like for you?
I guess to start with, for me, it was a process of understanding what a seasoned voice is. And I guess we all have our own definition of that. But for me, it was really about recognizing that it's someone who knows their worth and that they have value. And the reason that becomes seasoned is because it comes through lifetime's experiences. It comes through shedding skin, shedding friendships. It comes through shedding masks and personas until we find that space that is our truth. Some people say a purpose or a calling, different words for it. But that truth then comes with a voice that will not let you go. And that voice just has to be spoken. And I think it comes at a time with that seasoning that tends to be when we are older. And so for me, it was really coming to terms with what that meant for me. And then being able to go, that is my space. That is my ground. That is where I want to be able to stand and speak up, and then having that voice. And I think part of that process is, we hear a lot about purpose talk. It's a big drive. It's a very big word that's used. And it comes with a real depth within people that if they don't understand it or don't know what it is, that you search. And I think for a while you search, just taking in all sorts of pieces everywhere. And then you start to let those pieces go. And it's not until you actually realize that it's already within you, that purpose was always there. It wasn't something out here that you had to find. It was about letting it rise within you. And so the more you're starting to shed and release things, you're really allowing that rise of truth to come up. And then you really get to be able to go, that's it. That's my voice. That's what I'm here for. It's imprinted in us. It's imprinted in us before we even arrive, in our mother's wombs. And I think part of the issue is that we do go on such an external expedition to try and find it. And that's just a natural, part of being younger and wanting to experience, thinking that those experiences were going to be able to give us purpose, as opposed to knowing it's there, it's within us. And then as we discover it and step into that, we really get to, I think there's a strength in that backs our voice. There's a strength in it that allows our voice to become clearer and more certain and absolutely more steady. It becomes that steady voice of, no, this is what I'm doing.
You were talking about that, one of the words that, like the excavation, I think almost of, rather than trying so hard, that we don't need to constantly be pushing ourselves around that concept of purpose, rather maybe sitting quietly in reflection or allowing ourselves to just have some meditative time, some reflection time, to allow what, as you so beautifully put, what is imprinted in us to rise, rather than going searching, like always searching for it and feeling as if we haven't achieved anything if we haven't actually found what that purpose is.
Yeah. I think the difference is that when we go searching for the external purpose, we think that what we're going to find is the meaning and the purpose behind, why we're here, what we're doing, that sort of thing. As opposed to if we go searching, understanding that the experiences that we're going to encounter in life are there to be able to really bolster the purpose that's within us, to really deepen that connection to the purpose. So it's like, as we shed the personas and the skins and the masks, we're really keeping all the little nuances that actually feed into that purpose that really then come up. And I know that you don't think that a seasoned voice is necessarily a masculine or a feminine thing, and it's certainly not an age-driven thing, but it is absolutely a resounding truth moment where you really deeply know, and that your voice becomes, as I've said, steadied, seasoned, strong, to being able to say, this is my worth and my value. And the thing I love about that is that then allows it to be so beautiful in so many ways. It's the mother. My purpose is to mother or to nurture or to have care and compassion. As much as it's the person who is, my purpose is to be a voice and be an activist and to beat the drum and to do all those things. Both of them hold deep worth and value, and neither is greater than the other. And just owning that one that's yours just gives you every capacity to then be able to live that really meaningful life.
I love that. And so I would ask, was there a time in your life was there like a watershed for you where you just went, everything that I've been doing, and I love how you talk about that, the seeding of your purpose essentially through your life. And it's something I talk about a lot as well, that, we seed our purpose right throughout our lives. So was there a time in your life that was a bit of a watershed for you where you suddenly realized that everything that you had been working towards was rising up? The one living system that you talk about, was that your watershed?
I think the beautiful thing about watersheds is that we think we've had them so many times along the way.
That is so true. Yes.
We think, oh my gosh, this is it. This is that. Aha. And a few years later, you're like, what? I've just had it now. And I think you're allowed to have as many of these watershed ahas, because what that does is that really germinates that seed to really start to grow in capacity. And every time I think we have one of those moments, it really then deepens that resolve of, this is where I'm going, which of course takes us to the next part of it, and that builds the resilience and our capacity. So I think that I never want to get to that last watershed moment, because that would mean essentially that I'm done. And I don't want to be done with, being able to voice and express and experience, I guess, life in as many ways as we can.
Yeah, I love that. Yes, of course, because if we, yeah, as you say, if we get to that last and say, right, well, I can't imagine I'm going to have any more watershed moments. I can't imagine I'm going to have any more epiphanies. So that's kind of me done. That would actually be quite boring, I think. So I
Yeah.
really love how you've expressed that, and how you see that as a way to continue to move forward in your life, like to continue to be deeply connected and creative and excited about your life as you move forward.
Yeah.
So, what
And I,
was, yeah?
I was just going to say, I think part of it is with those watersheds is gathering them,
Mm-hmm.
because I think the more I've gone along, I've realized that at each gathering point, I've been able to go, that's why I wrote that. I used those same words back then. Oh my goodness, that's what, and it's like you're picking all the fruits to go into the basket, and you're realizing you've had the mix there all along, and that it was going to take time to bring it all together, that it wasn't going to be just one moment, one thing, that it really was about the whole culmination of life, and adding every flavor you can to the bowl, and giving it some great seasonings and sauces and everything else, so that you keep producing, building and building and building, which is exactly what you've done. I mean, I guess another great word for it is metamorphosis, right? Like you're changing, evolving constantly.
Yeah, and it's a much nicer word than pivot. I love metamorphosis. I like that because yes, it's so true. Because you go through, many, I suppose, crucible moments. You go through many times in your life where you think, your life comes undone, it unravels, or there's the opposite end of the scale where you have these incredibly exciting opportunities, and so the ebb and flow of life. There are so many times where we are called to reinvent and replenish our lives, if you like, to reconsider what we want to bring forward into our future. What is it that we are shifting and changing? And yes, I think metamorphosis is a beautiful word to use for that process of transformation, because we all go through it, and being encouraged by the fact that we can continue to learn and grow from those opportunities, I think is so
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. And I think in addition to that, having that wisdom and that seasoning, we get to a point where we realize that forks in the road still lead us to where we're going, that, untrodden paths lead us to where we're going, that there's all sorts of ways to get where you're going. And I think, I mean, pivot was such a great word used around that business frame of modeling, like pivot. But really, I think when you come down to removing it from that business framework, being pliable and being flexible and malleable with life is really what we're doing with regards to working from that more fluid, seasoned voice space, as opposed to a strictly business or entrepreneurial space. We become, we really know that, especially, I mean, if we actually start to think of this in a bigger picture, as we age, we want to stay flexible, we want to stay fluid, we want to stay malleable to life, because it'd be so easy to not do that. And
Yes.
so when you are working with your voice, it helps you to stay in amongst life and living with her.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful segue into how do we set ourselves up for the second act of our life. And you've just mentioned some great ways that we can do that, which is about remaining flexible and being willing to go with the flow and being malleable, and literally recognizing that when we are flexible and fluid, that we are more likely to be able to move forward more easily, like with ease, rather than getting very stuck in a rut or being very stiff in our outlook or our points of view and perception about
Mm.
what is possible as we step into this second act. So
Mm.
I would like to talk a little about your work, your life's work that you are bringing through now, and around the one living system. So that's obviously something that has really, been imprinted in you and has really come to fruition over the last couple of years, probably more, that I've seen you being, much more of a voice for that. So talk to me and to our viewers a little more about what that means.
I think as we pull in all those gatherings and bring them together, you can really be starting to think, what where is this going? Where is this taking me? And you have to stay very open to all sorts of voices to being able to find where you are going to land at each step. Because if you try to control that direction or stay rigid to an outcome or how it must appear or look, you often miss the point altogether. And so I think one of the things really important going forward with that worth and value and seasoned voice is staying open to being detached from the outcome, allowing it to flow, allowing yourself to stay really deeply connected to whatever you're waking to and being driven towards with your work each day. And for me, that just continued to pull together towards the living system of having heard so much of her voice so much over my life, both through the ground and through the sky and through all the different, creations, and always just wanting to not just hold space for her, but to have that voice of who's actually speaking for her in this scenario. When we sit down and we talk to all different people about what should or shouldn't happen or where things should go and all these things, at what point does life itself have a voice? Who steps in and actually considers all the other components of life? It is becoming more now, maybe in an ecological law-based sense, people trying to speak of, the legalities of ecology and everything else, but still that removing that legal framework, really being able to look at it as that deep sacred thread that joins all of us in life without any limitations, without any restrictions, with every sentient component being, a part of that, and how that thread joins all of us and how it weaves us all together so delicately. And that's where we are today, like really starting to understand that I impact you, you impact me, we impact the earth, we impact the trees, we impact the water cycles and the flow of the solar system from above below, so it's really about trying to bring that voice together for us to just stop for a moment and find stillness and silence and be able to allow ourselves to become deeply connected again to that really sacred thread.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's such an important point you make about the interconnectedness of all things, and
Yeah.
that every step we make on this earth has an impact. Every footfall, every breath, everything that we do has an impact. And we need to be more aware. We need to be really, ensuring that we are more conscious of that footfall, more conscious of those
Mm.
breaths, more conscious of how we are interconnected and how we are impacting each other, and through our choices, through the things that we do and the
Mm.
things that we say every single day.
Yeah.
So, what final piece of wisdom might you have for anyone stepping into what might be the second act of their life? So, what I mean by that is, for those who might be moving or transitioning from a particular career into becoming an entrepreneur, or might be looking down the barrel of leaving a career or a business, or empty nesters. There are so many ways that we could frame the idea of the second act of our life, but it is certainly from about 50 onwards that we start to look at, well, how can I make a positive impact in the world? So, do you have any words of wisdom as a seasoned voice?
I think the most important thing to remember is to know you have value, to know that you have worth. Proof of that is in the fact that you are here and present and alive and with us now, and to honor that worth and that value by giving yourself to life in whatever way feels right for you at any point in time. Too often it is so easy to, especially moving into those second acts, that you start to be curious about, where's my relevance? What do I offer? What do I give life now? How do I matter? You do matter, you have deep value, and you have such great worth. And I think more and more now, that wisdom that we gain through that seasoned voice is something that everybody is really wanting to have around them more in their circles. So finding that truth of the voice that you speak and being able to deliver it wherever you can.
Yeah, I love that. Particularly that piece around recognizing that you have value, you have something to offer, and that you can, at this stage of your life, as you move into this second act, that you can create something of significance, whether the significance is around relationships and family, or because I'm always reminded of, my mum. She was always, her purpose, she would say all the time, said, all I ever wanted to be was a mother. And she had such a strong, it was her driver. It was the thing, her children and family was so, so important to her. And for other people, we all have that internal driver. And
Yeah.
so discovering what that is and recognizing that we bring value through that intrinsic purpose, through that intrinsic driver that we all have, and recognizing how important it is to really establish that self-worth, and that idea of value that we bring to the world is so, so important.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Well, Cari, thank you. As always, I know that we could probably speak for hours more. We would just go off on different topics, but for today, I think we have covered that topic really beautifully around purpose and stepping into the second act of our life as a seasoned voice, and recognizing what some of the ways that we might do that and do it with ease and flexibility, and be fluid with our thinking, body, mind, and spirit being fluid and flexible. So thank you so much for sharing with me today. It's always an absolute delight to speak with you. So thanks so much for sharing your seasoned voice with all of us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. And bye for now. Thank you all for listening to Seasoned Voices Radio. I'm Simone DeHaas, your host. And today I was joined by the fabulous Cari Taylor. Thank you for listening.